Go down here and
Now see
participate.
Mercy.
And Nicholas Beaver's on there now. And sure who that one is. Nicholas Beasley, and then Rick and Sue, I believe was the other name on there.
Go ahead and call the Yamhill Water Advisory Committee meeting to order. 3:03 on Tuesday afternoon. Get a roll call. Rick Walworth. Ryan Jensen. Jason Walworth.
Kyle Owens.
Marcy Hadeen.
And who all do we have online?
John Christensen, Rick, Nicholas Beasley, and Sue. John's raised his hand.
John's present, our engineer. All right, this time we'll open it to public comment. Did not receive anything from Sharon, so I don't know. Is there any public online that would like to comment at this time?
Morning.
Hearing or seeing none, we'll move on. Old business. This is where we were gonna talk about the log jam. This was kind of what we all thought was a temporary quick fix to maybe help reduce some issues in this next summer. And I know, John, are you on and want to address this and give us some guidelines?
Oh, right. Yeah, I need John.
Are you guys able to hear me?
There you are, John.
All right. Good afternoon. Sorry, I wasn't able to make it in person today.
That's fine. This works.
Yeah, so the strategy here is hopefully you guys all got copies of the project description that Sharon sent out yesterday. You can see a photo of the intake screen, and the primary issue that we encounter is that as the creek levels drop, the amount of water that can get diverted into the fish screen drops significantly. So the idea is that we put a log jam in immediately downstream of the screen, and that would create a pool of water at the screen that would allow more water to divert into the screen. This would provide, near-term better capture of water released from the impound is the primary objective with this.
And John, that's not on the CIP, correct?
No.
Let's see, I mean,
Capital improvement plan. Kind of like the water master plan.
yeah,
John, from your expertise in this area, what do you think our benefit would be by doing this as far as the water from the impound and the usage of it?
I think you would significantly improve your capturability of water from the impound.
What is that gonna do to the people downstream?
We'd still get some flow going by though, right, John?
Yeah, water will always be able to flow by this, and it's really just the amount of water the city's drawing from the creek will control how much water is flowing past. So if the stream is naturally flowing 300 gallons a minute, the city will have to limit the amount of water they're drawing to make sure that some water is bypassing. But this log impound will not prevent water from going downstream.
You just move it down.
All it's gonna do is help capture and create a pool, so when they open up the impound, it's gonna create some more work on Jason and Kyle to try to manage that during the summer, but they can open that impound a little to keep the intake at the plant at a higher level, and we're not losing the goal, correct?
Correct.
Do we have the money? Well, that's the next.
Yeah, well, what's the process?
They released water this last summer. But the problem being is that this, yeah, we have no way to capture that at the plant. We could maybe 20%. Yeah, from the end now, yeah. And the rest flows on by. Whereas if they had that log, they have a pool. John, is any of the SDC funds usable in a project like this?
No, not currently, because the project's not on the capital improvement list, so it's not an SDC creditable project.
What would it take to get it into the CIP to make it useful? Or can we do that?
Yeah, I think we just have to adopt it as a capital improvement through city council. I don't know if anyone from Walt's office is on the call today, but it's a matter of identifying it as capital improvement, identifying the percentage of the project that is attributable to system development charges. And then I think it has to go through 2 readings at city council and a public notice.
In your thoughts, is this would be a short-term fix, a quick fix for this next summer?
Correct. I think you would be in a better position related to water availability if this were in place next summer.
Come out at the end of the season, or how do you do that?
We wouldn't have to remove this, would we? Or it'd just stay in permanently?
It would stay in permanent, yeah. And that's why we've selected a log, so it will get approval from the state and federal, so DSL and the Corps. We're trying to put in an improvement that, is a natural condition, and that way it's not a impact to the waterway.
Are there any permitting concerns?
Was that a question about permitting concerns?
Yes.
No, I think from the perspective of, getting approval from Army Corps, DSL, and from Department of Fish and Wildlife, this is an approvable plan. So I think we're okay on that side. It'll take some time. I mean, this is probably 6 months of permitting to get this approved. But, for what it is, the installation will happen pretty quickly.
John, if we presented this to the council here next week as a recommendation, you think we could get through all the hoops and have it in place for summer?
Yes, I think you could. If we had council approval by the end of December, I think we could get this in position to have a permit in hand in July.
Yeah, we officially.
Yeah. We would have it for this summer.
Would we have to make a motion recommending?
I would say so.
I would make the motion that we recommend to the city council that they add the water project to their CIP list.
At the log jam. CIP and move forward with that. Any discussion? Second. Moved and seconded to recommend the city council to add the log jam to the CIP list and to move forward with implementing that. The goal to have that in place this summer. Let's do a roll call.
Ulrich, aye.
Jensen, I.
Adams, aye.
Hedine, aye.
I will make that recommendation to council at their December 8th meeting. In regards to funding, John, any ideas other than, getting that on the CIP list and SDC funds? Any other options that you know of that would work?
Not as far as a grant. Arthur with Business Oregon did say that this could fit the category to get funded through, I think it was like the Immediate Opportunity Fund. Or is it Public Works Fund? That's a low interest loan through the state.
Just wonder if we could have, if we want to go that route. Again, we'd have to figure out water costs and if we could pay for it at the current.
I do think that's key in the recommendation to council is that we have to provide a strategy for funding the work.
Yeah. And we can't use all of SDC funds to pay for the whole thing, though, can we?
No, I think probably the best case scenario, we could do 40%. So it might get you 40,000 out of the 100,000 needed for the project.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure the wash could fit in there. In the dark.
Any thoughts, Jason or Kyle?
John, is there any way that we could work with the developer that's gonna be coming on board here pretty soon in the city to help fund some of that project?
Absolutely.
That's another-
They are willing to honestly do whatever it takes to get their project approved. So that is an opportunity there.
That would be great. Yeah.
They recommend council that the new Van Dyke subdivision part of the criteria to move forward is they cover the 60% of the log jail. Maybe 60,000. Do we think that that project will be moving forward by the time to get this in place?
I think that's the goal of the developer, yeah. I think they've got a planning commission hearing on the 15th of December, and I think they're hoping to get a recommendation of approval at that time.
Is there any way we could get them to pay 100% of it, through our SDC?
I think I've never it.
I mean, I don't know, John, do you think they go 100% of that project? Or is that pushing it?
It's worth having the conversation with them, yes.
Okay,
Well, without that log jam, aren't we putting ourselves in jeopardy without the log jam? I got development move forward.
That's part of the discussion Kyle and I had this afternoon is even without the log jam, our capability of the intake is, let me go back here. So when the issue arose with what we could take in, we could have took in more. It was just the downstream aspect of it. That's what we're trying to manage here. And that's kind of what I wanted to discuss with everybody is, although the log jam's, you know, a great idea on paper, at the same time, you know, if you're capturing that water, we're still gonna have to manage what's going downstream because we are not the senior right users on that water. So you still kind of at the, kind of catch 22, right? Like, well, kind of where you're at right now with the creek.
But you're in catch 22, but at the same time, if we have a fire and Brian's down here with the trucks hooked up, you guys need to be able to pull at a faster rate.
No, we can't pull out a faster rate, that's what I'm saying. We always could have pulled out a faster rate.
the only thing that the log jam is going to do is slow down the impound water coming down so that 8 or 9 million gallons of water in the impound, instead of only collecting 20% of it in the city town. Hopefully with the log jam, we would increase and maybe collect 80%, and only lose 20%. But the theory that the thing that's going to take a little more work on their end is to monitor that valve.
Well, that's not a big deal. It's not-
Because, I mean, if the plant's not running, you don't want the impound running. So the only time you would, if you open that valve, if the plant's gonna run, and you're gonna start. You know, if the creek's only providing 400 gallons a minute flow, and you pump 200, and you're gonna subsidize 200 from the impound. It's just gonna slow that down and capture that.
Yeah, that's the big thing. for slowing the income.
And I think that's the goal for now. It's not the perfect fix, but I think it's at least improve our bang for our buck off of the impound for the summer.
Yeah, it's just basically in the morning, opening it. When I leave home and the plant's off, close it, and that way we're saving all that impound water. While the plant's not running, we got plenty of water running down the creek.
So you're just keeping that,
The impound,
you know, if you gotta release 100 gallons a minute down the creek to satisfy your downstream
overflow.
overflow, but now you're,
But when the plant's off, we got plenty of flow going down.
you're- by doing that, you're gonna shutting the valve off when you're not running, you're gonna rebuild your impound a little bit during that period, so
But that's no different if there's no log jam. If we shut it, it's not, when it's off. That makes
The other benefit to this project is that right now, the fish screen is not compliant with ODFW. When the stream level drops below 14 inches of fish screen, then you're drawing water at too high of a velocity, and that's an issue for ODFW. So this will also address that condition.
we'll bring the city into compliance with.
Yeah, that's one of those.
Would bring the city into compliance.
That's another note I was making on the next
Correct, John, that would bring the city into compliance where the fish screen.
Correct. So right now, ODFW wants you to regulate the amount of water you're drawing out of the creek so that you're not drawing it too fast past the screen. And what happens is that creek level drops, the velocity into the treatment plant is constantly increasing. So if we're able to keep that depth of higher above the front of the screen with this log jam, it would address that deficiency.
How high would the log jam keep the water level compared to the screen?
We just need to keep it at 14 inches to allow you to draw up to 450 gallons a minute.
Okay, I just want to make sure it wasn't gonna go over the concrete to where we'd always have to suit up to get out there and clean the screen. But it wouldn't be, so that's good.
No, no, it's basically that what we just want to get it to the level where it's,
Compliant.
yeah, most of that screen is submerged all the time.
You know, with that said, John, does that put us in, I mean, I hate to go circle back around to grants, but does that put us somewhere with ODF that we could go after some of their grants in regards to fish habitat, things of that nature? Or should we just lean on SDCs and the developer?
Well, there's pros and cons on each side. I mean, obviously getting money from a grant is a good thing, but it always takes time to do that. Most of the ODFW grants are for voluntary improvements. And I think because we're in a non-compliance condition, that would bump us out of that category that would get the grant. Because they do have like a $50,000 matching fund for fish stream enhancement. But I don't think we meet the criteria for that.
Got something on check on?
Yeah, they could fill up with sediment.
Yes.
Over time, right?
Over time, yeah.
Yeah.
That's one thing.
We don't know, because you could have a big storm and.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a lot of sediment that comes down.
Yeah, it's constantly an exercise on our end, you know, the side that's already building up. Yeah, it's a good point, Paul.
Transportation for what, 2 to 5 years?
I mean, we get,
Maybe every summer.
yeah, I think Kathy's spot on, pretty much.
Is there some easy way to resolve it?
Is there a way to put like a sluice gate or some kind of gate in between the logs?
I think he's asking engineering that.
Engineering,
Did you hear that, John?
Yeah, the concern about sediment deposits behind the log.
Possibly putting in like a sluice gate or something to just exercise that so we don't get built up in sediment that long.
I don't think we're going to be able to get away with putting a gate valve in it. I think what we do is put the log in at a position that it's slowing down the stream. It's not stopping the stream. And so you're going to get a natural pool behind that, but it's not, sediment can still get carried through past the log.
And we got shovels, they can just go in.
You know, it's not, we're not truly creating a dam across the creek. It's a log that runs out, you know, not exactly perpendicular to stream, but kind of at a 75-degree angle that it just interrupts the stream flow enough that it causes a pool of water to develop behind it.
You know, it's not the perfect fix, but it's we need to start somewhere, and I just looking at the least expensive. So along with our recommendation for the log jam, we want to recommend council if they negotiate with the planner to one, either fund the whole project or negotiate some portion of that. And then look at adding this to the CIP, so if the builder does not, they can't get them to fund the whole thing, we could at least take up to 40% of the SDC funds.
Do we need to change your recommendation?
But we have the recommendation to the log jam, the funding piece is kind of a secondary recommendation to that. That'd be correct, John?
Correct.
Any thoughts? Gotta do something. Well, and that's the thing, I know we don't have $6 million to the pipeline that is by July. So I'm trying to do with what we've got while we work on the bigger project is buy some time and we're doing something. So I guess somebody wants to make a motion
False alarms.
Yeah, make the motion to recommend to the city council that we ask the developer to pay for
the log jam.
the log jam, 100% of it, or I think negotiate a portion of it,
And also include that in the CIP.
and include it in the CIP. Yeah,
Any discussion? Roll call.
Phillips, yes.
Ulrich, yes.
Jensen, yes.
Adams, aye.
Padina, aye.
We will make those two recommendations to December 8th council. I think that gets us started, and hopefully the council will be able to move forward. We can get that done by summer.
Excellent.
Thanks, John. Thanks for your input on that. Appreciate it.
Not to change the subject, but remember what the meeting down here, Sherry Simmons said something about putting gray water in the houses separately from the water line. City of Newburgh does that. They require their developers to pay for that in their development process. I don't think it's gray water, I think it's untreated water. And it's outside and it's labeled differently, it doesn't go into the house, and it's not a treated water source.
The piping of that would just cost.
I don't think the Yamhill is set up to do it. I'm just saying, I was surprised that some cities are actually doing that. It is a requirement for the developer to make that happen in their fees when they're putting their projects
So you would
together.
have to have two separate pipelines.
Yeah, but how you still can't get untreated water from out there.
Yeah, it's just somebody tapping into the wrong line.
Oh, and that.
Yeah, if they did that,
That's
that's
why
on them.
this, sure, comment was, I thought it was totally off the wall. And someone were doing it.
Yeah, Happy Valley and Beaverton both do that. Neither city has actually utilized that pipeline yet. But there are miles and miles of what we call purple pipe in the ground throughout developments that at some point the cities want to put in, untreated water into it for irrigation purposes.
Would we need water rights to supply that though? Like even if we brought out the Yamhill, because we can't get out of Turner Creek, because there's not enough flow down from
All
there.
right,
We don't have water rights anywhere else.
do it out of your lagoons.
Honestly, that was a big thing that like I discussed, honestly, because the lagoons are treated when we're discharging. And if you can capture that water from fire suppression, I mean, that's millions of gallons.
And I don't know what, it'd be interesting to
Well,
check in what Newburgh actually does, 'cause I'm kind of curious.
You come draw from it without piping. Just
Yeah,
number
I
four,
think-
but
I
that's
think
only
Dayton-
while we're discharging them.
I think Dayton waters their part for water out of their sewer.
I feel like our permitting is heavier on that end than it is on water.
Yeah.
No, I was just talking, if we just build a small $200,000 reservoir for untreated water for fire suppression, or, you know, things of that nature, where you wouldn't be drawing off domestic water.
I think we have no reason to have
You know,
I bet it's got more equal land than our lagoon does.
Well, we'll move on to item 3B, update from staff on operational costs to produce water.
No, to be honest with you, we're starting to break it down right now, see how we can get it into formulas.
That's a big key of what we need before we really start looking at other options.
Yeah, I don't think quite a bit to gather all that, break it down, because you're not gonna want to just pull a month by itself, you're gonna need a few data points to build an average, so you got more accurate, number.
We'll keep working on that. Sharon did send out the documentation on the tie line, Benville and Hillsborough, some of their contracts that they have.
A lot of material.
Lot of reading material and a little bit I know just from the meetings I've been involved with Mac and Hillsborough. Two different ways about going it.
On paper, Hillsborough is a lot better option, I mean, that's.
I think, yeah, looking at everything, kind of leaning through and where, especially where Hillsborough wants us to tie in at Patton Valley.
It's on the right side of the mountain.
Not Richmond. And John, were you saying that 192,000 grant for the transmission line, you thought there'd be funds there to work on maybe doing some preliminary stuff on that tie line with Hillsborough?
I do think we can work that funding towards that strategy. Yes. I mean, the funding is there to evaluate replacement of the upper transmission line. And it seems that a component of that could be an intertie to another system.
I was just looking at the routes and stuff, tie in at Patton Valley and Mount Richmond, and just use Mount Richmond all the way over to Hacker, wherever the transmission line coming down from the treatment plant. Tie in there to the reservoirs. Don't know what that would look like, or if that's feasible.
Hillsborough had some pretty good, information in their contract, even though it's an old one. One of them was their basis and cost equity for all the wholesale users. Whereas McMinnville wants 1.5 times the volumetric rate of what they charge the city residents. So you're paying 50% more just to be there. And they're only talking 720,000 gallons. And they are defined it as surplus water that they were selling, which could put us right back in the same problem deal with city folks versus the outlying areas in the future. Look up to them. They do their annual review every October 1st for what the next year's rates, and that doesn't become effective until the following July 1st, which is 9 months later, so you actually have a chance to communicate what's going on. So it's not like a surprise. So they seem to be a pretty well organized group over that way. But they did have some things like system development charges paid to Hillsborough for new connections.
Yeah, there's some different things in there that I think, you know, if we determine that's the route we want to look at, there needs to be more conversation with them. We looked at it at about 30,000 foot level. We need to start coming down.
And what is their other 77 compared to what we do?
What we think today.
Then there's gonna be some significant costs incurred in that 5.5 mile pipeline.
Yeah, just from the distance wise, from where Mac wanted us to tie in up at Haskins Creek. I think that's roughly 11 miles.
That's what even the last discussion was 11 miles.
That's twice a mile.
Isn't that right, John?
You said 11 miles?
I think it's 11 miles from Haskins Creek to town. If we tied in up at McMinnville's treatment plant.
Oh, we wouldn't go all the way to the treatment plant. We'd go to Panther Creek and Meadow Lake Road. Let me take a quick look at it.
But
I thought Mac said they wanted us to tie in up there by their plant at the upper end of Panther Creek. Right up there.
They're okay with tying in at Meadow Lake Road. I talked to their engineers about it.
At the lower end of Meadow Lake.
Yeah, it's where Meadow Lake and Panther Creek intersect.
So there's two intersections with Meadow Lake and Panther Creek.
Oh, I'm sorry, the one closer to Carlton. The other end is right, basically at the treatment plant. That's pretty far away.
That line at the lower end, I believe, is Carlton's water line, not McMinnville's.
McMinnville has a line that runs down pretty close to there. It's about 2,000 feet from that intersection.
Okay. I know Carlton's line runs right there too.
Yep.
the difference between 11 miles and 5 miles, plus the difference in cost of water that they're already starting with.
Permitting's the big one.
Yeah.
Of the cost.
Going down the road rather than the dirt road.
Hillsborough is definitely better option.
I think you're looking at about 8 miles to get to the Mac intertie.
And at least probably one pump station.
They got a lot of pressure there. I'm not
Got a lot of pressure.
so sure about that.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, they, it seemed like they had like 180 PSI or something there.
I know Hillsborough is a very hot line coming off that valley. Yeah, they're way up there. Like I said, at the 30,000 foot level, it's like Hillsborough would be at this point in time, it's the way to look at.
Yeah, their treatment plant's at about elevation 700, city's treatment plant's at 500. So we're pressure wise, we get there just fine without a pump.
From the McMinnville. Any thoughts off the Hillsborough side?
I can't remember where I heard this the other day, but I thought the pressure on the Cherry Grove line was like 180 pounds.
Yeah, it is.
Maybe I heard that from you, Brian.
Yeah, their hydrants are very hot in Cherry Grove. You have to be very gentle. Even a quarter of a turn they'll get a bounce at their plant.
Uh-huh.
But it's a very slow, gradual shutdown and a very slow, gradual opening. When they take water off the hydrants up there, it's like they only open them maybe quarter. You opened it full bore, you would pull the pump right off your truck.
So we can certainly put together the dollar analysis to compare the cost between the two. But there's certainly, as you guys have pointed out, some other things in the language of that McMinnville agreement in particular with the surplus water that, you know, may drive the conversation here. So I guess what level do we need to truly compare these options?
I think we need to look at probably the distance between the two, the price of water between the two. And then like Rick pointed out, the language Mac is saying surplus, where Hillsborough does it, if Mac gets to a point that let's say the city of McMinnville grows to 50,000 and they don't have surplus water this summer, are they gonna shut us off? So I guess that language of surplus is a little concerning.
Nick Peasley has his hand up. All right, Nick, you can talk.
Yeah, Nick?
There we go. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm on a coworker's laptop. That's not me in the picture. So just so you're aware, the Hillsborough water agreement that we have is also a surplus agreement. It just doesn't use surplus in so many words. If you look at the agreement section 3, Hillsborough reserves the right to review future co-op water master plan updates and to impose limits on its water deliveries to the co-op based on Hillsborough's available water supply capacity. In essence, most of these cities will have an obligation to serve their own populace before they can sell or send water elsewhere. So in most instances, unless you have a very specific contract that you're able to wander through with one of them, you will end up being a surplus user.
Okay. So no matter what, will be surplus. But it will affect the other price, hookup fees, construction costs, distance.
5 miles versus 11 will be about, what, $5 million? Well, that's what John said last month, about $1 million a mile.
Is that about right, John? $1 million a mile?
Yes.
So it's
And I think the Mount Vernon route looks like it's about 5 miles. That would intertie with the transmission line. I'm sorry, Mount Richmond.
Mount Richmond line.
Yep.
Does that make sense, John, if we come down Mount Richmond and tie in there with the transmission line coming from the treatment plant to the reservoirs?
Yeah, I think there's some benefits to that strategy because you're feeding the reservoirs versus the MAC interconnection. You'd be feeding distribution directly.
Better blend.
And then depending on the pressure, we might be able to, those connections back towards the treatment plant, if for some reason the plant's down, would there be a way to maybe
Shut a valve off.
shut a valve off and run water back that direction to those connections if need be?
I believe so. I mean, their treatment plant sits about 50 feet higher than Yamhill's treatment plant. So as long as there's no pressure reduction valves on that system, that should work.
I've been all in on the city.
Wouldn't have to be able to pay
A lot of construction costs would be better that way. No permitting going down the highway.
It's a county road versus the state.
That'd be a lot easier permitting and construction wise, right, John, on a county gravel road?
Yeah, you certainly see savings in not having to repave the road for sure, which you'd have to do if you were going down the, well, either a county paved road or ODOT road. Yeah, we could get permits approved either way. I don't think that's a major gate in the project. But the surface restoration is a big cost driver.
Yeah, I think 95% of Mount Richmond would be gravel. The only little bit of pavement's right off of Patton Valley. I think it only runs half a mile, if that. Maybe a little more. But it'd all be county permits, Washington County and Yamhill County. But I think Hillsborough could help us with the permitting if we went that route.
Where did the end? There's not very much Washington County like there, is
There's not a lot.
there? Yeah, mostly.
I mean, 90, I'm gonna say 95% of it's gonna be in the Yamhill County. More.
The first portion does seem like the best option.
Oh, yeah. Anything? Recommendation, or the students of Hillsborough concentrate our efforts on Hillsborough, highline, just some of the funds. We start with preliminary, engineering, work that route, and then maybe we can start working with Hillsborough and
They will leverage some of their engineering support as well.
then,
They have the resources that Yamhill County does.
so is that a recommendation we want to make to council?
If you want to make that recommendation, I guess until you come in this all that says it's not the route to go. I mean,
But at this point, it appears it's
most feasible.
better of the two.
Probably better not to spend a bunch of money looking into the other option more. This
Concentrate our funds
Yeah, and
to
it's one way.
what looks more feasible at the moment.
Well, it's just so much cleaner to come in from that side of town, get your lines already there. You're not making a new set of lines to come figure out how you're distributed.
I like the thing that's going in, feeding into our reservoirs, so that
So I
way
do too.
we're keeping our, we just put in a new 18-inch transmission line down to those reservoirs.
Yeah.
You have enough water to fill it up?
Now this would just help keep them full. And then with that tie, if you needed to feed back towards the plant,
It should.
if the plant went down for some reason, you could still keep those connections.
And
Make
there's
a
already,
recommendation that we, city county, the city council to go further with the city of Hillsborough. hookup. I'm saying that correctly. Or we use the SBCC some funds to evaluate that line.
I know they've got the 192,000 coming, and that was part of the transmission line look at and recommend
Yeah,
engineering in their evaluate that Hillsborough,
along with the other.
the other. That makes sense, John?
It does. I think the other step we should take is just get a document written that kind of explains the pros and cons of these two options to present that to city council. I don't think it needs to be very elaborate. We can put together just a basic map of each option, show that, McMinnville is going to be 50% longer in length, and then we can list out a couple bullets of some of the things that are of concern with McMinnville intertie.
Back is the cost. And then the length, You know, it's, what do we say, 8 miles roughly for the McMinnville, John?
Correct.
Depending on where we tie in. 8 depending on where we have to tie in 8 to 11. The cost. And it comes directly to town to distribution, not to the reservoirs.
Right.
Whereas with Hillsborough, we're 5 miles.
Connecting into the
Able to
line.
feed, able to feed everyone on the.
Able to feed reservoirs.
These reservoirs, these are lines that we're going to pay for paying
Yeah, we use our
new water line.
line to town.
And then if we get an upgrade in the reservoirs or add a reservoir, it's all coming into that system.
Yeah,
Water pressure, no, it was exceptional compared to McMinnville.
I think they're both, pretty good.
Which one's gonna be the fire department better?
We're coming off the reservoirs that are coming in that 18-inch line. Because if you come from Mac, if they're feeding just directly in, I think they were only talking like a 6-inch line, right, John? 6 or 8.
I think we're in control of how large the line would go in between the two. I think from a long-term strategy perspective, we probably are going to be looking at like a 10 or a 12-inch line.
And I think that's what we ought to look at anyway for future growth, having a line that will carry the city. If for some reason we're completely done with our plant, if blows up, falls off the earth, or whatever, we've got a route of water. If we're gonna do this, then we look at the future that is big enough to handle 100% of our water needs.
Better go bigger than smaller and regret it later.
Plan on a 50-year deal, and is that too far out of line, John?
No, and I mean, I think 10, 12-inch line will get you there. It's because you're downstream of the reservoir, that's an advantage. I'm sorry, you're upstream of the reservoirs, that's an advantage. Because the reservoirs are what's going to control that peak demand and that 18-inch line into town. So this line can be smaller, but yeah, we can design it so it's not a bottleneck of ultimate build out if this is the sole source of water for the city.
And then we could plan on, work on adding more reservoirs and bigger storage capacity as grants and funds become available.
Correct.
Is that kind of what you was looking for in pros and cons, John?
Yeah, I think we're there. We just need to get it on paper. So
Well,
we meet again in 2 weeks, correct?
yeah, we'll work on getting this written up. I think I've got a council meeting on December 8th.
Yeah, the 8th is the next council meeting.
Do we have to be on the agenda?
They're on the
I
agenda.
think I'm on the agenda already to give a report. They wanted a monthly report.
Yeah.
And so I'll work on getting this written up and.
Not help all, I can show up with the fire hall.
Okay, we'll get this written up and over. So I think we made a motion to move towards the Hillsborough tie.
Second.
Got a second? Any further discussion? Vote, please.
Phillips, aye, Newman,
Ulrich, yes.
Jensen, aye.
Walker, aye.
Adam's eye.
Hadeen, aye.
I'm gathering high as the correct method. Or
Technically, aye.
I'm trying to feel fancy.
All right, I think we've killed that that one, we'll move on to 3D, update on grants. I see Sharon gave a list. Again, I think a lot of these grants, we just need a real good defined project. And the funding all put together.
The SDC funds, you only can, those are funds that have to be used for capital improvements and have to be in capital improvement plan. So what is, so when they built a new housing development, so it's so much per house?
Correct.
And it's broke up so much for the water park or park or whatever those do.
Yes. That was another aspect of the new development coming on, was that they were willing to pay the SDCs up front to help out with. Well, you know, that was kind of their sales pitch to us.
Have you collected all the SDC money from the new development? You know, the end?
I'm not 100% sure, but I would say yes, I believe so.
Yeah. Yeah, I know they have, because all the permits have been pulled.
Yeah.
Who knows? So, really, in the water fund, there's not a lot
No.
money there budgeted for projects, improvements. The water reserve fund. That's mainly SDC fund. so. The hazardous mitigation grant, they extended that, I believe, today, January. The county's still working on their arbor fund grant process. I'm sure it has listed on here. Hollow Street, Hemlock Street, water for the arbor funds. I would look towards the contractor, the builder on the Hemlock. They gotta go back to the school to get water.
So I can provide a little background on that one and the county ARPA funds. So my understanding is that the county has funds available for sewer or water projects. There's 200,000, which would require a 25% match. That's for planning projects. There's 500,000, which is a 50% match for capital purchases. I think Sharon followed up with the county, and that would be if there's, equipment that the city needs to buy. The county would fund 50% of that. And then the last category is implementation, which is up to $1 million. And that's a 50% match. So what Sharon and I talked about a little bit last week was that this money has to be spent in, I think it's 18 months. And so whatever project the city applies for, we need to be aware of where the other 50% of the funds will come from.
So would we be better off looking at that water master plan and looking at that list that's on there? And
That's exactly where I headed the conversation to. Yeah. So there's the one that Sharon listed on there, the Hemlock Street water line project. The total project cost is $500,000. That's a water line that runs from Highway 240 down the unimproved right of way. I'm sorry, from Highway 47 down the unimproved right of way to 240 along Hemlock.
well, kind of my thoughts on that Hemlock, I'm not, is that ought to be up to the contractor that you subdivision.
Well, Brian, they're going to go south of 240. So they'll go from the highway down to their property.
From 240 to, aren't they gonna need to come back there to that four-way there at the Juniper and Maine?
Yeah, so they'll run from Juniper and Maine down to Third where the property is. That's what's in their current plan.
Juniper. So they're gonna cut across through that unnamed street.
Yeah, I don't recall the exact route. They jump over to Hemlock at some point there.
I know the first plan I've seen was Juniper to First, down First to Hemlock, Hemlock over to Third and in.
That sounds right, Brian.
Would it make more sense just to go from Juniper down Main to Hemlock? Take out those two corners and lay in from Main to Third?
I'm sorry, say that again, Brian.
So if they come down, if they go back to the school there at Juniper and Main,
Uh-huh.
go east on Main Street for a block to Hemlock, and then Hemlock over instead of doing the Juniper to First and down First and over to Hemlock. Take that.
Juniper.
Right there at the,
I got Hemlock in Maine.
school, yeah, the school property.
Brian, the reason we weren't doing that is because there's an 8-inch line in Main Street that's not proposed to be replaced.
That 8 inch is not proposed to be replaced.
Nope.
Why not?
We're gonna feed it in other ways.
How are you gonna feed that new industrial park out there? If that ever comes online?
That's where this Hemlock loop would come in.
Why wouldn't we just run a straight line and a 12-inch line out Main?
But just didn't. I get, there's a couple different ways of looking at it, Brian. One is that you build a big line in the middle of the city, or the other is you build, kind of medium-sized lines around the perimeter of the city. And based on where development is occurring on the perimeter of the city, we have more opportunity to build those perimeter lines. So we put a 10-inch line, the subdivision, the Chad Davis subdivision, we put a 10-inch line all the way through that up to Highway 47. And so if we do an intertide there, that would get a feed all the way to Elm Street. That would be big enough to feed the industrial area.
Yeah, I'm still not sold on that, but
That's really.
further discussion. But would we, for the arbor fund, would we be better off just to look at some of these projects on the water master plan and I mean, I could see improving Olive Street all the way down to Main. Continuing that 12-inch line down to right there at the tracks. That's gonna help. Gonna help all over. That's like $500,000 on that one.
Yeah, I think that's where we need to go with this conversation is how much money are we willing to commit on this ARPA funding?
No, I think you need to continue where we started with the 12-inch line coming in. I mean, it really does us not a lot of good to increase lines on the east side of town when we're next down on our source. I think we need to keep building that source and working. I know we've all, just by adding the 18-inch line and the 12-inch, we've already seen an increase in fire flow at the south end of town here compared to what our readings were prior to that.
So if we're looking at the capital improvement list from the master plan, there's project 1B-1. That's Olive Street from Camila down to Main Street. And then there's 1B-3, which is Olive Street, Main Street to 3rd. So those projects are $254,000 and $184,000 respectively.
Sharon already applying for it, if you keep on the back for the ARPA? Is Sharon already applying for that? Then with what,
The backwash.
yeah, if she's already applying for it, then
So is Sharon just applying for that 26,000?
Plus our filter media that she would have on there. which is an additional $60.
so then she's already committed that grant to that.
But is it 500,000? John, on that grant, can we have multiple projects? Remember? I see Sharon's already committed some funds to that.
I'm not sure. That would be a question for the grant administrator. I don't think there would be anything wrong with that, but
And then on the Olive Street project, I was reading through there, that's considering taking off from where the school district left off there, Camellia, coming down, correct?
Yep.
Does it take into, I know there was some more hydrants put in there. Does that take into account that hydrant that was put in at Azalea? For that new subdivision? It's already in.
Are you asking about whether it includes one hydrant?
Yeah, I think when I read through the preliminaries, I think the Olive Street called for 3 hydrants. I didn't know, since Azalea, that hydrant in Azalea for that new subdivision, those 3 homes, they put in that hydrant there. If that removes one hydrant off of the Olive Street project.
Potentially, but I don't know that that's driving any decisions.
If it does, we're not talking a lot of money, maybe 10,000 or something.
Yeah, I think $7,500 is kind of the going rate for a hydrant on a water line project.
So something like that. But then we have to match it 50%, so we'd have to use roughly, well, we could only use 30% of SDC funds for that project, correct?
Let me check. It's a bit of a mixed bag on which projects and how much SDCs.
As I'm looking at the preliminary cost estimate you guys provided back in 2018.
Perfect. Yep, you're up. You're on, then, Brian.
Probably, but what they've already kind of committed out of that Arbor funds and Olive Street. We could probably do the Olive Street improvement with Arbor funds and SDCs. Roughly. Some of these projects we're gonna have to just do on our own budget. I think we need some more work before we can apply for some of these other grants in regards to the reservoirs and look at some other funding alternatives. That's kind of a combination of the D and E. Do we want to propose council if they look at the Arbor funds or what they've already requested, also include the Olive Street improvements down to Maine.
Which one is the Arbor Fund, the one on the bottom?
Yeah, it's the Yamhill County ARTA water.
You're just talking about doing the improvements.
Yeah, the
So-
improvements.
500,000, so you have to fill up the rest of the funds, that's what you're saying?
Yeah. The 50% match, so we would have to come up with about 250,000. We can only use 150,000 out of SDC. We'd have to figure out another 100,000, and maybe it's look at some of these other grants, you know, the state and tribal assistance.
Brian, are you looking at that $502,000 cost for the Olive Street water improvement?
Yeah,
So that actually included that segment that already got replaced because this predated that. So approximately only half of this is going to be needed. So it's probably
250,000.
in the ballpark, yeah. To go from Camilla down to Maine.
Then, but we still have to come up with 20% and more from, so we could do 30% SDC. We still need another 20% to make the match.
63,000. Yep.
So we'd have to look at another funding source for that.
What did that give it?
What that would do, that would continue that 12-inch main line coming down Olive from Camellia down to the intersection here, the log cabin. Now you increase your volume of flow to that point, which is gonna improve your flow going all directions. I ran fire flow on the 6-inch line south of town here prior to the 18-inch line going in and the 12-inch line going in. We were just about 500 gallons a minute is all we were getting on the south end of town. No, we ran flow here about a month and a half ago, and we are at 1,100 gallons a minute. We're just, the improvements that have been made so far, we've increased south of town. You know, if we bring that 12-inch down to that intersection, that's where it ties in. Correct me, John, doesn't that tie in and go, it goes west and east out Loris Valley and out Main Street, correct?
Yep.
That's gonna increase. And
Is it also gonna help with your water pressure issue at the high school?
it's gonna make that loop a little bit stronger. I mean, it's only an 8-inch going up Main that ties into the 12-inch over here at Main and Juniper. But it's gonna increase that loop flow. The more we can loop the lines, the better off we are. And that's, I mean, eventually we need to improve over here. Yeah, Hemlock needs to be improved, and I think that I'd like to see negotiations with the builder. If they want to build. Dedicate to that upgrade.
Well, they should, it's gonna give the water flow to their houses.
It's still around It is still in negotiations. Any thoughts? As far as the grants and
The grants are kind of defined the thing, and there's time frame on all of them.
yeah, they got different time frames, they got different requirements to that. I mean, for the bigger grants, I don't think we have all the ducks in a row. Be ready to really present. I think it's more work than my thoughts from doing grants is a lot easier if you have all your T's crossed and I's dotted.
So the only person we have working on grants for the city of Yamhill is Sharon.
Yeah.
I would think we might want to recommend that we find her some help. Because she got a full-time job to start with.
No, I think the city will be looking hopefully in December, hiring an interim city manager. Which, depending on what they have to say, might free up some time or. I'm kind of curious to see how the city manager works.
So hang back on that suggestion.
I think I would until we see what give the interim city manager. I don't know, just kind of like that feeling what I'm hearing their council, they're looking for the city manager to do an audit and help them figure out where they're at.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of why they went the interim route. Fresh their eyes, looking at things and saying.
So we actually successfully applied for a grant yet.
I know PD is applied for grant and was awarded. So. But I mean, for this and for the grants, I think,
Well, when we start getting into this water tie-in thing, we're gonna need to be a little more, I mean, we got there's a lot of stuff in line out, but obviously grant money would be very helpful in moving that, because I don't necessarily think we don't want to take out loan for.
not for $7 million or whatever it might be for the.
Which means if we need to, we should be prepared to ask for more resources to support that effort. That's kind of why I go in that direction.
And I think once we get the preliminary engineering, that'll help us.
Yep.
To kind of
Get ducks in a row.
kind of look at what grants that might help with that and help fund that.
The transmission line from the treatment plant to the reservoirs gonna have to come into play, so.
I think this 192,000 they got now for that preliminary study. That'll help figure that out and help play into the grant.
$192,000 for a study.
Oh, it's cheap.
I think that's for the engineering and all the engineers are not cheap.
We at least get a couple of cases of Kirkland dust.
It was just the cost that the master plan assigned to it. I agree. It's a lot of money for a study.
Well, especially when you're done, a couple of reams of paper.
Yeah.
I think the discussion about long-term stuff for grants is good, but I would like to see us make a decision on the Yamhill County ARPA funds. I think that Sharon's got to get that application in here really soon, and if this group wants to see other projects pursued on the water side, I think now's the time to make the decision.
Well, don't you think that, funding wise, if we do that Olive Street improvements as a priority, moving that new line this way, is that gonna take up pretty much the rest of the funds that gonna be there with what she's already requesting for capital purchase?
Jason, you're being awful quiet, what's your thought process?
I personally, I mean, for me right now, outside of the intertie, I just look at the mechanical aspect of where the water plant is right now and keeping it running and keeping it, a well-oiled machine. There again, as you can see here with the grants, without a backwash pump as a backup, we can't even create water. Without the filter media being changed out, we can't create good water. So it's just, that's where I'm at with the grants as far as, the ARPA stuff. To me, let's get some of the heavier lifting done on the mechanical and the water plant, keeping that running right.
And the new,
That was one of that.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
that includes the backwash turbine.
And you said there's something else, Jason?
Yeah, there's a 60,000 worth of filter media that needs to be replaced. It hasn't been replaced since the water plant came online. So, not to beat that to death, it's just one of those things you have to target from an operational standpoint. It's like, if you can't make water, you can't make good water. All this is for naught. So when it comes to the infrastructure, I mean, you could pretty much close your eyes and point your finger somewhere that needs to be upgraded.
So that media is not part of your operating budget?
We just haven't had enough. We pulled out of our, reserve to help pay for that. But if we can get it in a grant, we can put that 60,000 back in reserve for other projects.
Oh, we just looking for the grant.
Yeah, I feel like, we did a lot of labor for the county, leading up to this. So it's like, this is our time to kind of strike within the smaller stuff. Yeah, there's a plethora out there, hydrants are one, it's having the correct distribution, like, Brian brought up a good point, continuing that line to, keep that pressure, continuing out south, looping the system.
So are there low pressure points in the city as far as water pressure?
Could you answer that, Kyle? I mean, I know you looked into the distribution.
What I found is generally about 70 PSI, but that's not pulling off hydrogen, and that's just hooking up to its own bib and testing it.
We've been, fire flow, we've been between 65 and 70 static PSI around town. Our biggest problem is volume, line size. You get over here to the east side, and there's a lot of smaller 2-inch, 4-inch lines that need to be replaced.
What's the line size going out that towards shrinking?
That's 8-inch. Then I think, is it next down to a 6? 6. The last time I flew the hydrant there by Shreve Falls, it's been, I haven't done it in a while. We were like 534 gallons a minute. Probably up. By now I haven't done it. So we're in the new 18-inch.
I wanted to throw one more thing out there while we kind of have everybody's ear is OAW came to us. It's probably been about 4 to 6 months now. And then wanted to do a water loss study for the city. And that was around $24,000 roughly. And that would kind of put us, give us a real baseline, a real foundation, so to speak, for where we're losing water, why, so we create an actual format to present to council, to present the public, so everybody be highly, highly informed instead of just getting data from Kyle, myself, or even past, public works administration. So that was another one that I kind of wanted to put out there with everybody is it would be nice to start, and I know we kind of beat like collecting data and spending money to get data, but this is one of those that kind of gives you a real foundation of like, anytime anybody comes, we would have the source at our hands and say, this is where we're losing the most, and this is why, and this is what we can do to better that situation, you know, and you would have, you know, professional people at the highest level giving you that criteria. So
So you already have that?
no.
According to that water master plan, you guys have access to 20% unaccounted for water.
Well, it's just like a rough number. This individual's gonna come in, and, you know, really clean it up. You know,
Well,
it's
he's gonna tell you where it's lost. So you must have master meters throughout.
Correct. I know it seems like a high-end number, and I even kind of step back at it, but
But if you could reduce your water loss by 10%, they say you should have,
that's what,
you'd
yeah.
be saving money.
Yeah, I mean,
We got-
fixing costs, but
Meters that don't have capturability, that are 60-year-old meters that aren't capturing what's going through. We might not be losing it, but we're losing it through the meter, which is same as losing it.
Oh, I see what you're saying, replacing some meters.
Well, that's one of them.
We just bought some valves for a shut off for each damn house. The Hulk just handed me a $2,000 bill, and I said, "Well, it's-" and it's just shut off.
yeah.
So we're gonna try to put them in,
Yeah.
it's only gonna break some.
You know, I mean, I guess, you know, like you're saying, Kathy, you can start capturing on that small end scale, you know, where it's like, yeah, it's gonna cost you 24, but yet you're getting the problems you solve. Are you gonna, like, but work towards those major plans, like those interties, but, you know, work within our budget, work within, you know, those small little things. that we can hold. I don't know. I mean, I just kind of, this is just talking now.
We gotta take small bites, not huge bites that we can't afford to do.
You know, and if they can come up with a pinpoint of your water loss problems, it'd be, and I imagine some of it's gonna be your old line,
Yeah,
that meter line.
correct.
We deal with that water loss on our district, and it's not near the volume you guys deal with, but we still have something. Frustrating. Our meter's not that old, we replaced ours since I've been part of the district, we replaced them all. And we have to look at the city, so.
Yeah.
Unless we've got someone that's on our line, you know, that could be. There's a couple houses in town, I wonder where they get their water.
Yeah, there's a couple of sneaky ones out there.
Anyway,
Was there anything else you want to pose on the county arbor fund grant? If you want to go with the Olive Street improvement,
We're gonna be able to fund that though, that other 20% off of, that we can't use on SDCs.
that was about 67,000, right, John?
Correct.
And then does that include the 86,000 that's already been committed for the other things on that?
No, the 60,000 would just be so we've got a $250,000 water project.
Right,
I'm sorry, $500,000 water project. 50% of that is going to be funded by the city. So that's 250K. And we are, I think 40% or 30%.
30% on Olive Street is what you got.
where does the percentages come from? From SEC funds, why you got a percentage?
There's John can probably answer that. The percentage for what you can use SDC money for, there's some state calculation or something.
Oh,
It's a little more art than science. You kind of just look at the project and say, does this benefit future development? And if so, how much? So increasing the size of a water line, in this case on Olive, does improve developability of the city. So the amount was 30%.
So we still need to come up with some additional funds. to Make that happen. It's like maybe that state and tribal assistance might be able to provide 3/4 of that. look at that.
Yeah, we gotta be careful mixing grant.
Yeah,
My suggestion is you gotta have capital, whatever you want to do, have the capital to feed the other half of the grant obligation. There's too many unknowns otherwise.
and either the Olive Street or you look at something else. I would do that. Hasn't the water plant skate upgrades, hasn't that been done?
Where's that?
Number 16, that's, I'm looking at. But the alternative water source, kind of already looking at that. Camellia Street in water improvements, that's been done. Correct? And then like the new line in the school,
What was that?
Camellia Street, is that,
That's done, Brian.
that's correct, John?
Correct. It's complete.
Try to get caught up here and scratch some of these off. Jason, any recommendations you have besides the Olive Street project? Maybe within reason that we could reach. I don't know what's left in water reserves or water capital outlay. I don't know if there would be enough money to go with the SDCs to make the Olive Street thing have the funding to do that. I think there is, I think,
Well, we could actually make a recommendation, we don't have to take it.
yeah. John, I think our kind of our consensus here is the Olive Street improvements for the Arbor Funds, using that 30% SDC, and then looking at the capital outlay water fund and seeing if we could come up with the rest of the match out of that to make that happen.
Makes sense to me.
That give, think that gives Sharon enough direction to go for that grant?
I believe so. Jason, Kyle, which line's worse? The line north of Main Street or the line south of Main Street in Olive? One's an 8-inch cast iron, one's a 6-inch.
I would think the south one.
Yeah,
They're both on the list and about the same length, so I would just shoot.
I
for
would say the
30.
south, John, if you can hear me.
Okay,
And although another one that comes scared me is having that jump over the top of the bridge. No, it's not. It scares me more.
You mean the line tax the bridge?
Yeah.
No,
But there's, don't they do that a lot though? I mean, like tax lines to the bridge.
Yeah, but it'd be nice if it was like HDPE, something with more good, you know.
well, they have different adapters that flex, but those are like $50,000-$80,000 for one of those.
It's one of those ones that scares me, you know, where that leak over there, that break. And feeling that vibration come off that bridge on that line.
Oh, yeah.
I think we can put a sleeve over it.
Right, for a whole nother discussion.
Yeah,
Talk about that
that's-
next month.
Moving forward, the county grant for the Olive Street, and we're talking, we're gonna do South Olive.
Yeah.
So is that this one? For this intersection? This one?
Intersection that way. Replace that 6-inch with an 8-inch. That's it.
And that's that tied into what size line on the other one?
8-inch from there to Camellia.
So you're upgrading. So. And then the other one is to make that line from Camellia to,
That would have to be another project.
yeah.
You thinking 8-inch on?
On the south side, going from 6 to 8. From the Trask down to 3rd.
You know, looking at the plan here, and it shows 12-inch.
That's on the north end.
There you go. Yep. 8-inch south of Main Street on the master plan.
Fireball. We give us, yeah, that would improve the load of the hydrants. We recommend grant funds for that with using 30% of SDC funds and then look at the water cap pool. See if we could come up with good funds out of that to meet the rest of that match of that grant. That makes sense. Put that in our,
Okay, I move that we recommend that they pursue the ARPA grant money for supporting the Olive Street water improvement project. Is that covered?
yeah. Any further discussion? Vote.
Kathy, I.
Ulrich, aye.
Jensen, aye.
Walker, aye.
Adam's eye.
Padine, I.
All right, we will make that recommendation. Council's not gonna like it, for sure.
You could love recommendations, first one, I think would be great.
We get work done. Moving forward.
So on, back to Jason's as well on the back, so is that something that we're not doing or they did do? Looks like they already applied for a grant for that.
Yeah, they're wrapping that one into the ARPA.
Okay.
And then as we get more information and move further along, we can start looking at more grants and funding.
It's that matching grant. Oh,
And I think, you know, if we start talking with Hillsborough, maybe we might have some ideas or sources that might help us.
Yeah.
They've been very friendly to talk with during our water
Yeah.
issues. They were very supportive.
Yeah.
So, let's see. I think we kind of talked about the water master plan updates. Do you have anything else to add to that, John, or?
Not specifically. I'm available for any questions folks might have on the master plan.
I'd like to loop back around when Jason's concerned about the lost water at the 24K. How can we get that dealt with? Because lost water, especially when we're asking people to conserve or shut the water off and we got water going down, who knows where.
Is that something we could loop in with the county arbor fund grant?
So right now I've got OAWU doing a similar study for another water company I work with. Their fee is, it's between $5,000 and $10,000. I don't remember exactly what it was. I would say no, I would just take,
If it's only that amount, we look at,
Well, I will say this, John, they did me a proposal bid on that and it was 24,
24.
correct?
Oh,
Yeah, and I said the same thing, even I presented it here. It's kind of a number that throws you back.
yeah, you're not that big of a water provider. That's really high.
Mhm.
I mean, you've got, 50% of your customers that are in a 3 mile by 3 mile square in
I will
town.
say this, that was with the outside water districts also.
Oh, maybe that's a little different.
Yeah.
well, if that's the outside, then you're,
Then that was just an overall that they gave us. So I mean, if we want to cut that in half, we can.
I would say you want to concentrate on the city.
Yeah.
not your districts.
yeah.
Let the districts need to take care of our.
We want to see if I can end up the quote for our next meeting and then
Yeah.
maybe we can look at, the capital.
Yeah.
Funds, their budget, and then make a recommendation that there's funds that are just in council, they do that in the capital.
Anything we can do to save water.
Yeah, that was part of his thing that he'd come and talk to council
Yeah,
before and then let them decide if they want to go with it or not.
Correct. I was just gonna throw that out there, if you guys would like,
So
we could even bring.
he'll
to the
explain more
advisory
what he'll do.
Tim to come in and explain it to you guys, and you have a real grasp of what that,
But in
water
general,
loss program gets you. So,
We want to, I mean, I think we're,
Sure.
Yeah.
yeah, I'll reach out to him and see what we
They're not
go.
charging you the ones right here. just-
No, they're great.
It's an association.
maybe we could get them set up for our next meeting and just have them
Yeah. he's
well,
open to
just
that.
see if he- when you
present.
have time. but
Yeah.
And then, maybe at some point we look at inviting those people to join us again. Talk a little bit more, if you could, for you to hear what we've already heard from them.
Yeah.
Maybe carry that conversation on a little bit deeper.
Well, not only us, but the Zoom.
Yeah,
fans out
Zoom.
here at the same time.
So,
Yeah.
There's one or two other people.
that makes sense.
Yep.
Anything else for water master plan updates?
Well, I don't know if this is the right time to ask this question, but I'm gonna do it anyway. Obviously, we've got the development there on the Van Dyke property that's gonna go in front of Planning Commission in the next few weeks here. And I think one of the duties of this board is to, kind of evaluate the city's water supply and can it support development. And so I'd like to get some feedback from the rest of the committee on whether there's concerns with allowing development with respect to water.
Yeah, crystal ball, it'd be easy to say. It's gonna cause so much changes to hit in town right now, and to add that development at that time. I think it's,
Especially if we have a dry summer and the back road.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't wanna just, Van Dyke's not gonna be able to do it, but I'm thinking that if it was a few years out, it would be better than right at this very moment. Get it with summer under our belt, maybe we'll not rationing water. It might be more acceptable. City's gonna take a huge hit for that.
I just didn't want back to back that quick without seeing what effect that this will have.
Mhm.
But
What kind of a time frame on your development? When is it, when would they expect to have houses going in?
John, what are you thinking they're trying to break ground on that project?
I think they would, if they had their preference, they would be pulling building permits about a year from today.
Yeah, so they're probably a year out. Again, you run into that, if they meet the criteria, and you really stop them, legal presented counsel that brings into some problems. That's why I think, you know, the log jam, getting that, so we're able to utilize that impound water a little better. And then just do a better job at calming things down sooner, you know, getting, and, you know, we talked about the reservoir for, maybe the sewer discharge water. What if there was a way to make that available to the public for irrigation purposes? They,
to make only pump house and
well, if there's a way to do that, that
Doesn't cost them anything.
doesn't cost anything, maybe. So now they're not having to haul water in and pay the temple.
so that's not gonna help us in the summer because we're not discharging, so it's not treated. Can't reuse it then.
Yeah.
I think following up with on Jason, the guy that is willing to help us find missing water.
Yeah.
That kind of demonstrates some fiscal responsibility to the community, that the city is doing what they can to minimize the impacts to them as individuals.
Yeah, sure.
So it's, you know, it's gonna cost, but it could be worse.
Yeah. Yeah, I think if we can demonstrate that the city is trying to be as efficient as possible, try and utilize impound water efficiently, the leaks.
Yeah.
Especially if they're willing to pay for the log jam. And they're going to do some of these master plan upgrades, like the Hemlock Street, whatever, they're going to do that. You know, that frees up some money for the city that we can use to educate, to help with the timeline. If that makes sense.
Doesn't hurt to start building some goodwill, because when we start talking 5 miles of pipe and plugging into Hillsborough, the money's not coming out of it. We gotta come up with money ourselves.
Yeah. So. I mean, I think I would support the building going in, just especially if they're willing to help out with the log jam, you know, they're showing good faith, trying to help the city, you know.
I'm just gonna have to help city come up with some kind of how to deal with all that.
It's gonna be an educational,
There's gonna be needs some education because there's gonna be a lot come up. A lot of people pointing. And you're not gonna get it. You're not gonna get that away.
that makes sense, John? Is that what you were looking for?
Yeah, I hear the concerns there. It's just tough to, like you pointed out, Brian, what are we standing behind to say no?
Yeah.
Just for some perspective on the new development will result in about 5% additional demand on the water system. So based on the about 60 lots on the development, that will be 5% more water the city will have to produce.
Or worst case scenario, 20,000 gallons a day.
Is it
Um,
used?
Well, if we go by what we use during the summer during restrictions,
Sure, yeah, 400,000. Yep, I'm with you.
I mean, when we were in restrictions, we were down to about, say, 200,000 gallons a day. If we said 10%, there's 20,000 gallons increase. Would,
How many houses are we talking?
60.
So that'd be 20, is that my math right? That's 24,000 gallons of water, they use 4,000 each.
not everybody uses 4,000.
Well, some of them are new houses, they're only using.
Yeah.
I think there's development out of
60.
acres.
Yeah, they probably would, but if you just, that's the minimum, right? 4,000.
4,000.
If you're only use 4,000, how much more water is that a month?
You know, that's another thing too. I mean, we should always bring up the planning is, you know, making sure that the landscaping that they're putting in
Is water.
is water. And I don't know how much pool we have with that, but, you know, I mean, it's always a good concept to start.
I mean, out in the rural, we put in, you know, you gotta have fire plants and
It's really, when you start thinking about it, that's not a whole lot
No.
in all reality. For what they're gonna add to that.
Yeah, and what we get back with the funding capability, you know, it's.
So that's, in the public, when it comes up, somehow you gotta come up with that number. That gallons.
What's the SCD fee to those houses for the generator?
John, do you have that number right on hand? Is it are you thinking per house or just overall? I think
Oh,
it's
per house, you do one.
It is per house.
30,000, right, John, with sewer and water?
Per house.
No, I think it's closer to 15. I think they pay like 4,500 or 5,600 for water, and give me a minute, I can track that down. I've got it somewhere here.
Well, the total's good enough.
so I mean, if you,
I mean, I think you're gonna see it in both water and sewer. You're gonna see about $250,000 each for SDCs from this development.
That's the kind of money that could actually help with the Trent tie-in line, right?
Partially,
And then they become customers and, are paying monthly user rates, and
that's gonna help offset that cost of a new transmission line.
Give us more to look at.
Which we're gonna need. I think consensus, John, is we're in favor of it, especially if they're going to help fund, the log jam. That shows good faith on their part. And then if they're, if we get some of these, the Hemlock Street improvements, part of that. Maybe some other, however that routes.
yeah, they're gonna be doing so just to speak to some of their offsite improvements, they gotta build a water line, basically 3rd Street end to end across that site. And then from 3rd Street up to Main, we talked about up Hemlock or Juniper there. They're also gonna replace the sewer main from there to the treatment plant as part of their project. So there's,
Because of the wrong spot.
So is there a value on those things that they're gonna do? At some point?
correct. Yep, there are.
It'd be nice to have. that number.
Yeah, if you had that number, that would help in the educational piece.
Sure.
Especially, you know, when they're redoing the sewer line, which can help. That's the main line,
It's the main line, yep,
so that helps the whole city.
correct.
Can we get him to pay for the speed bump by Sherry Poultry's place? And she's gonna apply for it?
There's the last one on the other side.
We're a bunch of concrete.
Okay, guys, thanks for your input on that. That's helpful.
All right, anything else, John?
Nope.
We'll move on to new business. I know, Sharon provided the ordinance and their levels. You just sit out, or I would recommend that we study those and we put that as maybe a starting point at our next meeting after if we hear from the waters, these guys, and I think we've got one to address the council.
Yeah, I think you're gonna overload.
Part of the question, creating this.
Well, you want water, you're gonna take it.
So, if everybody's in agreement with that, we'll do that, and we'll work on that. So, anything else, John or Nick, before we move to public comment?
Nope.
Nothing comes up for me. I would mention that one of the things that you guys could look into as well is recommendations to the city council on conservation measures. A lot of what we've talked about today has been kind of capital project and capital improvements. But there are certain measures that can be taken on a city council level that can kind of encourage or limit water usage by citizens, which could, in some cases, help the shortage problems that are showing up. It's more an issue for next time, but one of the things to consider is that we can also kind of move in the direction of what the Water Master Plan talks about, which is major conservation efforts in addition to capital improvements.
Yeah, and I think that's, that's kind of our thought. There's so much to cover, and it's not gonna happen all overnight. I appreciate it, Nick. That's areas we need to work on. And we'll keep plugging away a little at a time. I think we're gonna overload council this go around. With that, I'll ask for any more public comment.
No hands.
No hands, seeing no public comment, I'll ask for adjournment.
I second.
We're adjourned until our next meeting in 2 weeks. Thank you, everybody.
Anyway, I figured that out, it's trying to, fire conservation regulations. It seems like we're pretty extreme from level 1 to level 2. Level 2 to 3 seems pretty close together.